in this slide is actually indicating the start of prosperity, the start of trade, the start of exchange of ideas, the start of exchange of goods, the start of definitely the exchange of culture at that time. Now, the next slide speaks about Renaissance. Renaissance um, is a French word which means rebirth. Now, what is this rebirth telling you? Rebirth refers maybe to the rebirth of the ideas, right? So, rebirth of which ideas? Rebirth of the ideas which were proposed by Greeks in their old days. Rebirth of ideas proposed by Aristotle, rebirth of ideas proposed by Plato, and rebirth of ideas proposed by different philosophers of Greek civilization. Let me read the points that are there on the slide once. A major art movement started in Italy, especially in city of Florence. Lorenzo de Medici's business in banking flourished. Known artists such as Leonardo da Vinci explored and created new mediums of arts using varying colors and images. Italy became a hub of elite fashion, and even English people were impressed by their adoption of couture and colors. Elite families of Florence spent as huge amount over fabrics as equal to buying big mansions at that time. People doing trade from Italy spent huge sums over buying spices from subcontinent. Now, when we speak about Renaissance, it was not specifically any political movement. It wasn't specifically any literary movement. Rather, I would name it as a philosophical movement which brought new ideas within itself. And if you look at history with a wider perspective, you come across this idea that Renaissance was going on in the whole Europe. No, in the beginning, the birth of Renaissance was in Italy, and then again in Italy, in the city of Florence, where this man known as Lorenzo de Medici had a flourishing business of banking. And he was a filthy rich man who who was actually empowered, who was in power at that time. And what did he do? What kind of man was he? Why am I naming him in Renaissance? He was a kind of a visionary leader who had capital, a lot of money. You may you may try and compare him with the known people or the known leaders or politician of this time who have a lot of capital, power and money. But what was different in Lorenzo was his vision. This man was basically interested in arts. And what did he used to do? He used to invest a lot of his money in funding arts. And he provided patronage to a lot of artists who used to live with him, spend time with him, and discuss these intellectual ideas with him. So what did he used to do? These people, these philosophers or scholars of the time in Florence, and these artists, they used to discuss the Platonic ideas. What are the Platonic ideas? The ideas obviously by Plato, who was a Greek philosopher. And they used to discuss different medium of arts through which they could project the thinking of Plato and Aristotle over canvas. Now, how can we understand this? We may understand this through any picture or image which shows people in their natural forms. If you visit Europe, or maybe if you look at the art of 15th century in Florence at this time, maybe you'll be coming across a lot of human bodies in their very natural form. Now, what does this imply? This tells you that scholars or artists of that time under Lorenzo's rule were basically interested in spreading humanity. They wanted people to be close to nature, to be humane and kind, and um, they did not want to invest their capital in the name of making money only. Rather, they wanted their people to have taste in fashion. Now, this can be understood through an example that Italy became a hub of elite fashion. Now, this man, Lorenzo de Medici's family, was known across Europe for wearing such stylish couture and different fabrics. Now, can you imagine any family buying as expensive fabrics for wearing as equal to buying big houses or castles? So they used to invest so much in fashion, which actually speaks of their taste. Now, moving to the next slide, Renaissance then was, if we speak about architecture, and if we look at the influence of Renaissance, the influence of this rebirth of ideas on the territories nearby Italy, for example, Spain, we see that people at that time in Mexico were spending hell loads of money on architecture, and they used to come up with such architectural structures which were dynamic, which were new and unique in form for anybody to explore. People today even are impressed by these Mexican buildings. So the next point says fashion, music, and art was defined as new way of living a rich and luxurious life. Artists imported colors and substances for coming up with new shades and mediums to be used on canvas. Lorenzo appreciated intellect, and many philosophers of the time worked with him. Now, this is giving you an idea that what was mainly going on in Florence, that is in Italy and in Spain, in the name of this Renaissance, and what kind of movement was it? It was more focused on art. It was more focused on depiction of artistic ideas through, building art galleries, through having big portraits. Now, obviously, it wasn't that modern time, so it was pretty difficult for the artists to afford these paints and colors and canvas and different textures for their paintings. So who used to invest capital in all this was mainly the people who belonged from elite class at that time, because they wanted art to flourish. The next the next slide says the major aim of Medici was to proliferate humanism. Proliferate means to spread humanism. The idea of peace, serenity, understanding, all this is related to humanism. He acknowledged arts and helped many artists in spreading their ideas. This era brought a major twist in ideas and thinking of the people. They started looking at many aspects of their lives other than religion. The artists of the time were inspired by Greek philosophers. They worked on Aristotelian and Platonic ideas. Lorenzo was a visionary leader. Now, this slide actually recapitulates Renaissance for you. It tells you that what was happening at that time in this major um, movement. I hope this lecture was comprehensive and it has given you an idea of what was happening in European states